All right, guys, today we got us a pile of turkey bones, and we are going to turn those into wing bone calls. I didn't film cutting them out of the turkey wings, getting the meat off of them. That's pretty self-explanatory. Cut them out of the wings, got the bones. It's 3 bones total, so you got like the big main bone that joins the wing to the body, and then these 2 smaller bones right here that come out of that like middle section of the wing. And then basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a Dremel tool here and I'm cutting the ends of them off and then making them into these little cut pieces of wing bone. And what I'm looking for is on the little bones. I'll show you a hole and make it easier. On this little bone right here, you can tell it kind of gets flat on one side and then more rounded on the other. So on this rounded end, you just want to cut down about where it's like perfectly round. So you're going to cut quite a bit off of this end right here. But on the other end where it's flat, which is where you're going to put your mouth to use the call, you actually go all the way up somewhere in here where it's pretty flattened out and cut that off. You can see those pieces where it's flat are only about that big when I cut them off. At the other end where it's round, you're looking at a significantly longer piece of the bone there. And then the middle sections, that's middle-sized bone, kind of varies. I'll cut them longer like this, where it's pretty round on the end there, pretty kind of widened out on that end, but that gives myself some room to kind of cut them down to length. They're probably not going to be that long actually in the call, so this one's a little bit shorter than the last one. They're probably about this length right here, but when you're fitting these bones together, I like to cut them off a little bit longer than I think I'm going to need them. That way I can cut them down later and then get those bones to fit a lot tighter together, so I don't have as much epoxy in the joints of the bones, trying to capture all that air and keep it from leaking. And then I'll vary as well. I'll show you guys some finished ones I have from last year, but I'll vary the length of them. So sometimes I'll make a shorter call, sometimes I'll make a longer call. It really just depends on kind of what sound you're going for. The longer call is going to be a little bit louder, a little deeper, not a whole lot, but it will be a little bit deeper. And then your shorter calls are going to be, a little bit softer, but higher pitched. So it really depends on what you're going for. I usually make mine pretty much the standard long length that everybody's used to seeing, just because that's what I'm used to and that's the sound that I like to hear. I gave a buddy a short one and he did just fine with it. So I like to make these. It gives me something to do through the winter time here. And then also it's nice to kill a bird over a call you made. So I'm going to get back at it and finish up cutting these up, and then I'll show you guys the next step. I just realized I didn't mention the big bone here. So this is what that big bone is going to look like when you get it cut out of the turkey. These are all boiled for an hour in borax and some Dawn dish soap. Really just takes the meat off. You can see the tendons and ligaments are all still on there. I'll get those off with like a little wire brush. But the big bone here, for this one, again, I kind of cut it long, but you're really just trying to get the top off. It's usually somewhere right around in here that middle bone will fit down inside of this one. And this big bone, you have all this extra bone structure in the middle of it that you have to get out. I'll use my Dremel with like a metal bit and kind of drill all that stuff out of the center of this bone. But this bone is, you know, a lot heavier, a lot thicker than the other one, so it takes some time. But what you're looking for is somewhere up in here, and then down here where it flares out. I usually, there's a little hole right here in the bone that you can see. I try to cut just below that hole and take the end of this one off. It gives you a good flare at the end of your call and really helps that sound echo travel some. I know some guys only use the other, you know, these two middle bones, and you can use that just the same. You just don't get that sound amplification. So if you really want to go through all the pain, because this bone is the most time consuming to get all the stuff out of the middle of it and get all these, because you won't just be cutting the tendons off. So you'll actually have to like scrape all these tendons off the end of this one. If you actually, you know, want that extra sound to, you know, loudness and carrying through the woods, depending on, you know, if it's windy or calm, I usually put them on there just to have it. It's just what I'm used to. It's what I grew up with. So I'll go through the extra effort of scraping all these tendons out of here and getting this bone cleaned up and putting it on there. But I just remembered that I didn't mention this on the previous when I was talking about it. So I'm gonna finish cutting these up and then I'll show you guys the next step. So this next step is the not so glorious part. You see all the meat in these bones. So you got to get out of there because you need these to be hollow. So once you get the ends cut off of them, these middle bones are probably the easiest ones and easiest to demonstrate. So what you do, you could probably use a small screwdriver. I just have one of these landscaping spikes here. And then you're basically just gonna run that through the middle of this and kind of wiggle it around, knock all that meat loose, kind of break it off the walls of the bone in there. And then what you really want to do is you just blow through it, and then you're going to blow all that stuff out of the other end. You use an air compressor. I don't feel like firing mine up just to do this a little bit, so I'll just grab it to where I can create a seal. Not actually putting my lips on that bone or the raw meat, but create a seal in there and then just blow through it. And then that blows all that meat out of there. You can see now it's hollow through the middle. So that's the next step. I'll continue to clean them. Obviously, I'm going to take them inside and you know, finish rinsing them out and cleaning them better with some water, but just to get it out of there before it dries all the way. That's how I get it done. I'm sure there's probably other ways to do it. Just want to make sure, like if your bones are a little dry like mine are right now, you just don't want to crack the bones. So whatever you're jamming in there, just make sure, you know, you're not like torquing it in there. Like a bigger screwdriver or something, or a drill bit may like crack this bone. They're pretty sturdy, but they will crack, especially when they're dry. When they're wet, obviously they're going to be a little bit more flexible. So do with that what you will. But that's the next step, cleaning these bones out. These little ones are a lot harder to do just because they're kind of flat on the one end. The rounded end's not so bad, but I may end up breaking out the air compressor anyways to kind of blow these out, but we'll see. For now, I'm gonna try to do it with this landscaping spike. So I'm gonna get this done. All right, so I got these bones cut. Here's that bottom piece. So that went from, just cut one here as an example so I could show you guys. So this basically was this bone right here. I cut it into this piece right here. So I cut enough pieces to make one, or at least mock one up. I haven't cleaned them out or anything yet, just to show you guys how they fit together. So of course you're gonna start with your, the biggest piece, this bottom piece, but then you're gonna get one of these middle pieces, middle-sized bone pieces, and try to fit it in right in there into that piece. And this is where a Dremel tool is worth its weight when you're making these. So here's the normal one that I cut. Like I said, I cut them a little bit longer so I can trim them down, and it slides right in there. But if you get one of these bigger ones, depending on the size of the bird you killed, if you get one of these bigger ones, they won't fit. The inside of this one is about the same size as the outside of that one. So if you try to stick them in there, they won't fit. But what I've found is if you take your Dremel tool, you can kind of see it on the end of this one. I've rounded it down. I've shaved this down on the end, and you can see how thin it is on the sidewall. You just want to be careful that you don't crack them, but if you shave those down and kind of give them that slightly beveled look there at the end, it's tough to see, but you can see the different color of the bone where I shaved it down with the Dremel. Then you can take these pieces and they'll slide in there a lot easier, and you can see how tight the fit is on that. So if you have a piece that you can't get in there, it doesn't fit, because usually, so for me, I have 3 different birds worth of bones here. It's my birds plus a buddy's birds, or bird that he killed from this year. And so they're all different sizes, right? I think one of them was from West Virginia and 2 from down here in South Carolina. So different birds, different size bones. So if you don't have a bunch of bones to go through like I do, to where you can find one that fits easily, being able to just shave that down with your Dremel tool there and get it to fit and fit snugly, will save you putting epoxy down in there and getting it all gummed up on the inside. If you have that tighter fit, it's much easier to epoxy them together and get that airtight seal. So just figured I'd share that tip with you guys while I was sitting here working through it. I did have enough, or I did just cut enough to mock one up there so you guys could see what it looks like. There's that piece that I beveled down, and then so you have this piece, which is the bottom 2 pieces, and then the mouthpiece. Like I said, the flatter side of the mouthpiece is going to go up, and then that just slides down in there. You want to be careful how hard you push on them. You don't want to crack the bones. But that goes down in there. You can see there's kind of a gap on that side. So I'll just fill that in with the epoxy. It's tough to get the top one and the middle one to match just because the bones are so drastically different in size. But that's it. That's basically the mocked up call there. So this one's a little bit shorter one, a little more compact than some of the others. So just a nice short one. You can jam it in your pocket. Not as worried about breaking these smaller ones. I mean, obviously they're bone, so if you step on them or twist them too much, they will break. But these shorter ones are less likely to get caught on something or caught in a backpack or a strap or something like that and break. So first one I made here this year is this shorter one. I'm gonna get back to fixing the rest of these, and I'll show you guys one of the ones I did last year so you can see how it looks when it's all epoxied up and done up. All right, so we got through cutting all these bones apart, and now, as you can see, I got to clean out the little tiny bone pieces inside of here to make this hollow. Huge pain. So got to take off some of this cartilage here, kind of letting these dry out, maybe get that a little bit less rubbery and a little more likely to flake off there. But I'm going to be spending the next few hours just trying to knock out all these little bone pieces. I'll be hitting them with a Dremel, these little Dremel bits, that one, and then this little circle one here, just to get in there and route all that stuff out. Some people take it out with, you know, small screwdriver or knife, but I feel like you put a lot of pressure on the edges of the bone there, and it's more likely to crack. Not to say it will crack, but I find that just using the Dremel and dremeling that out of there is a lot less risky of destroying your bones. So I'm gonna get to it. All right, getting pretty hot out here in South Carolina, even though it's just the beginning of February here. Got them cleaned out pretty well. You can see there's some pieces in there that I can't reach with the Dremel. It's just not long enough. So some of the, like the ones that are pretty bad, like this one has a lot of them in there. So I'll probably knock those out with a small screwdriver. Trying to find one here that's not so bad. Oh, this one. So this one's a little shorter, so I could obviously get all the way through that one. Okay, here, this one, not so bad, even though it is a, you know, pretty long standard piece. Oh, and to clean all that tissue off of them, those tendons that are like pretty tough, I just use this little wire wheel on the Dremel. Takes that stuff off, and then you're left, you know, these nice clean bones. Takes it all off there, you don't have to worry about it. So that's the latest update. Probably gonna take these up and get them mocked up, put them together and see how they look. All right, guys, here are all of the final pieces. Obviously I haven't hit them with the peroxide yet, so they're still a little, you know, natural colored. I don't know if I'm gonna do that to all of them. I may just leave some of them the natural color of the bone, which is, you know, it's got a little of that, I think it's fat in there that gives them that color, but you know, if you boil them too long, they get too weak and then you end up cracking them that way. So it's kind of one of those things, you know, probably some of these significantly darker ones, I'll hit them with some peroxide. But I have this board here that I made just to use as a jig for these, so I can put them on there and put the pieces together. That way when I'm painting these or, you know, putting epoxy on them or painting stuff on them, they don't tip over, and then it leaves a little space here at the bottom for all that epoxy to drip off. You can see from all the ones I've done in the past, there's some feathers I put in the board. That was from, I did this one last year. I epoxied the feathers into the caul there. It was pretty time consuming. You know, just a standard string wrap on there. You can see it easier in this one. This one I painted, but it ended up, when I epoxied it, you can see those were supposed to be turkey tracks. When I put the epoxy on there, for some reason it caused the paint to run, even though the paint was dry before I put the epoxy on there. So I don't know if it was just the type of paint I use, or maybe it's just, you know, the reaction with the epoxy kind of messed it up. But you can see this one's pretty white. These ones were peroxided. It's just some heavy duty peroxide. You can get at any kind of like hair place, like a salon store. That's where I buy mine. But you just paint it on them, let it sit, wash it off, and they'll be super white after that. You can see the difference in the color of the bones there. These ones I did last year, significantly brighter white. But that's it. I don't know if I'm going to mock these up and put them together just yet. Obviously, I don't really need them right now. So, but that's basically how I build these calls and put them together. So if you guys decide to do it, let me know. And then, you know, there's no other sound like a wing bone call. So it's not something those turkeys hear a lot.